All right, looks like we are live. Welcome, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Super late start tonight. Today's topic that we're going to be talking about is how to deal with doubt and uncertainty. So, those are things that often come up for people, and we end up struggling with those, and then we end up um, doing all kinds of crazy stuff. Like procrastinating, avoiding things, causing problems in your relationships, at your work, in business, all those kind of things. And we're going to talk about different strategies on how to deal with uncertainty and doubt and being able to get to the root cause and be able to put in strategies that you can actually use to change that. So, if this is your first time joining me, my name is Tina. I am a happiness coach. I help people deal with feelings of anxiety and depression and dark thoughts, and I help shift you from those dark places into a happier place. And I do this by sharing my experience, strength, and hope to be able to hopefully guide you in things that I've used myself, and these are tools I've used myself. And I do these on a regular basis. Welcome everyone on TikTok. Thank you for tapping the screen and sharing the live. I appreciate you, Jordan. Okay, so let's talk about seeds of doubt and fear. So, doubt is a form of fear. Fear is false evidence appearing real. And so, what ends up happening is we can go through our day where we're exposed to little things, and because they're so tiny, these situations that come up, we tend to not pay attention to them. We tend to let them go. Maybe you have a conversation with a friend or a coworker, or maybe your mom called, and now there's little things that get said that you don't really pay attention to, and they kind of set you off, and then something else happens, and then something else happens, and then next thing you know, you find that you're in a bad mood and you can't understand exactly why. Or you're avoiding certain things and you can't quite understand why. And you're like, oh, you know what, I'm just tired, or I don't feel well, or you know what, I'm going to do this tomorrow. And so when those kind of things come up, they're warning signs. And every time that I've been able to understand why is it that I did the certain things that I was doing, why did I delay when I know that this was something I wanted to push forward? And um, sorry, lost my concentration there for a second. um, so you can end up having these doubts, these fears that kind of creep in, and you don't realize that they're the things that end up holding you back. So when you start to look at what people call self-sabotaging behavior, what I found is when I go back and I look and I revisit, okay, what were the things that happened just before that? Before I made a certain decision, before I avoided things, before I had that fuck it moment and I just said, I'm just going to do it, right? And what ends up happening is when I go back and I revisit those things, I'll notice that there were little things that kind of seeds that got planted that got in my head. And why it's important to kind of go back and revisit these things and understand, where did this problem start? Where did it take root? Because that helps you learn to detect what the early warning signs are, and then you can start to put things in place. So maybe it was kind of like, a lot of times I go to hungry, angry, lonely, tired, or sick. Any of those five things come up, that's called halts. Any of those five things come up, and you end up not operating at your best self. So that is the first place that I will eliminate what kind of challenges were coming up for me. And I maybe don't take too much, I don't put too much weight on the fear or the doubt that I may be having, or the uncertainty that I'm having. And keeping in mind that every time that these feelings come up, they are there as a way to serve you, to for you to take a look at things. But oftentimes we don't want to look at things because if we look at things, then we have to face the truth. And sometimes facing that truth can be really scary because now we actually have to do something about it. If we admit something is actually a problem, well, we can't just, like, it's not human nature just to leave problems unattended, right? So this is why we tend to find ways to avoid it, to deny the problem exists, to let things slide and not pay attention. And next thing we know, our gardens are overrun with weeds, kind of thing, right? It's not that big of a deal when it's a small thing until it chokes out all the other plants, all the other things that you wanted to actually grow. So we have to learn to pay attention to the seeds of doubt so that we can pluck those things out, those unwanted things that are growing in our garden, and we can pluck them out before it does too much damage rather than waiting until everything's overgrown and everything that you wanted to grow in the garden has actually died. So um, this, so I'm going to give a specific example of there was there was a girl that I worked with, and she was somebody, and this is something else that'll end up happening is you'll have somebody that comes in and actually reflects and mirrors how you're behaving, but their behavior is a lot more pronounced than yours, right? So what happens is, so this girl, she was really, really timid, and I found her extremely annoying. And the more timid she was, the more annoyed I got. The more annoyed I got, the more timid she became. And she was like dancing around, and I wasn't even doing anything, but I knew that she had this wanting somebody to be her bully kind of energy. And people, when we go through challenges, because I've done this myself, where you know I feel uncertain about things, so then I start talking in an uncertain way and I start attracting this energy that people get irritated with me. And and then they might yell at me, they might say something nasty, all of that kind of stuff. So I end up attracting these bullies to me. And I had done enough inner work that I kind of knew not to do that anymore. And but I could see that she was trying to do that because when we feel uncertain, we feel guilt about certain things, we will draw somebody to us to punish us. And that's a energy. I remember reading this with Melody Beattie way back in the day, and she talked about how having accidents, car accidents, if you run into somebody, you're the one that actually hit somebody, then you have repressed anger that you haven't dealt with. If somebody ran into you, you have repressed guilt that you haven't dealt with. And I know 100% because I've been in accidents where I was the one who was doing the running and I was dealing with a lot of repressed anger at the time. And that was coming out in my therapy sessions and all that kind of stuff. And then this one time when somebody ran into me, it was crazy. It was like I was in a McDonald's drive-through and the guy pulls up and I go to pull up to the window. I guess he was looking in his bag, realized something was missing, and instead of like going around or anything, he just immediately went into reverse and backed into my car. And I'm like, what the hell? Like, I didn't even do anything here. What's going on? And what ended up happening is I was feeling guilty at the time because I wasn't going, I had made a decision not to go to my aunt's and uncle's wedding that they were having because they were inviting a guest that I didn't want to see. And so because of that, that was one of the first times that I was actually setting a boundary in a major way and going against the family. So that brought up all kinds of feelings of uncertainty and doubt and fear and stuff like that that I had to address. And I had to start to learn to um, stand up for myself and go against the grain of what other people wanted, right? To take that risk. And that meant I wasn't the good niece. I wasn't the easygoing Tina. I had to let go of that part of me. And that was not easy to do because that's how I got all of my approval, all of my affirmations, all of my people pleasing things. And when you are learning to change that piece of yourself, it feels really bad. Most people are like, that isn't even a boundary you set. But when you're first doing this, you feel like you're the biggest asshole that walked the earth. And it's a big challenge to start to set these boundaries. So you can have uncertainty and doubt and know that that's just a normal process of some of the changes that you're making because it's just different. So sometimes you don't actually have to do anything. You just have to acknowledge that this is different than what I was doing before, but I haven't done anything wrong. Hey, Dano, good to see you. And so you haven't actually done anything wrong. And you were doing things to take care of yourself. And what you have to do is you have to own your part, but now you also have to let other people own their part. And that can be really scary when you're like a people pleaser, caretaker of and worrying about other people's stuff. Now, that's not something I consciously chose to do. That was a coping strategy of being able to um, understand why, how I had to cope with the environment that I grew up in. Thank you, Misha. I appreciate you. So, growing up in the environment, I had to pay attention to what everybody else around me was doing as a protection mechanism to be able to cope with how I was being treated and to learn how to avoid those situations, right? So I had done all of this work of understanding um, how I was attracting bully type energy to me and how to prevent that and learning to stand up for myself and not feel guilty about that kind of stuff. So after I'd kind of gone through this learning, this healing for myself, what ended up happening is I ended up working with a girl that was a reflection of who I used to be. And I found it really, really annoying, but I couldn't put my finger on why. And what it really was is because she was acting like I used to act. And I found that really annoying. She was being really timid, really shy, and uncertain, and she was stuttering and stammering and like, oh, is it okay if I do this kind of stuff? And I'd be like, oh my God, I'm not even being aggressive with you, of course. Like, and it didn't start out that, like, it escalated to that point. But I had to take a step back because I'm like, why am I having this reaction with this woman? And I I had to step back and think, and I was like, okay, number one, where am I being that way in my life? Where am I being timid? Where am I being uncertain? Where am I full of fear and doubt? And I realized that there was this connection that I had that I was operating that way with my mom because she was disapproving of some things that I was setting boundaries on, and I was still in that timid, uncertain energy. And when I made that connection that way, I was like, oh shit, okay. So now I know what I need to work on. It's not this girl at work that I needed to address the issue with. What I needed to focus on was where in my life am I operating in that way? And when I fixed those issues, all of a sudden she stopped being so timid at work. And I thought, wow, isn't that really interesting? She didn't need to change. I needed to change. And when I fixed my side, everything it's kind of like when you fix that, the irritation ends up going away. Either they stop the behavior, the person is removed from your life, something ends up happening, and you no longer need that person to be that irritation in your life because you've healed that within you. And so this is what one of the reasons why it's really important to do that healing inner work, because if I wasn't healed, if I hadn't done that inner work, how I would have operated was probably had a conflict with this girl at work. And instead of having a conflict and something that needed to get addressed and her feeling bad and me feeling bad, um, I was able to just fix my part, and the situation ended up resolving itself. Hi, Katie. Come on. It's my cat. Um, so doing that really helped. Um, the and sometimes here's another thing too. There were sometimes that I found that if you are in a state where you're resentful or you're looking at somebody else's behavior and it's bothering you, and when that ends up happening, what's really going on is I would look at what, first of all, extracting the behavior and making a bit more generic, because it can be too easy to look at the specifics of the behavior and kind of go, well, I don't act that way. I'm not like that, and they're just over the top. Like say somebody blows up and gets angry, slams their hand down on the fist or their the counter or something like that. And you're like, well, I never act like that. I never blow up. I never throw things around. It's still anger, right? So they're um, angry and they're taking it out on the people around them. Okay, so that's how you make that behavior that you're seeing that's bothering you, and you take a look at that and you kind of go, okay, um, where am I doing that in my life? And if you're finding that you're wanting to criticize somebody for something, then a lot of times, so it's like, I can't believe that they're getting so angry and they can't control their emotions and blah, 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 whatever, something like that. When I find that I'm in that kind of state, what's really going on is I am mad at them because they are doing something that I am not allowing myself to do. So when I saw that, I was like, oh, I don't like their emotion. Whatever that emotion is, fill in the blank. I don't like that they're happy. I don't like that they're too bubbly. Oh, I don't like that they're um, you know, they cry all the time or whatever it is. There were a lot of things because I had a lot of repressed emotions that I didn't like seeing in other people. And so I was judgmental of those things. I was critical of those things, not outwardly because I was too much of a people pleaser to be a direct asshole. I found ways to be an indirect asshole. so, um, but understanding that, it's like, I used to find people who didn't work hard problematic until I realized I never gave myself a break. And just because and there were times where I'm like, I'm okay with that. I actually like to work. I get fulfillment out of working. I enjoy being able to do something where I actually feel useful and productive, and um that makes me feel good. And other people may look at me and kind of go, oh, you're a workaholic. Well, maybe. Um, However, it's not causing a problem in my life, and if it's not a problem for me, then it shouldn't be a problem for you. If it's a problem for you, you may want to look at that and understand, why is that a problem for you? What are areas in your life that you would like to be working harder? You would like to enjoy your work so much that it doesn't actually feel like work, right? And if you're doing work that you actually hate, then seeing somebody else work hard is confusing for you, right? It may bring up feelings of resentment, and you want them to change. You don't think that's normal. Well, somebody who likes to work, they love what it is that they do, they don't see it as work, they just see it as living. And so understanding that perspective um, can allow you to figure out why you're feeling resentful and be able to let those kind of things go. And that can sometimes be challenging because you may have to admit some things to yourself that you don't want to admit. And if you did actually admit them, that's when you actually have to make changes. And change can be uncomfortable. And I can promise you it is uncomfortable, right? And especially if the change is initiated from outside of our control, those life events that we didn't choose or ignored the warning signs about that get forced upon us, those ones are like, oh darn, this is really hard, and now I have to actually make these major changes because I had let this go too long. When we start to look at these things, when we start to admit some of these problems that we are having, um, sometimes it's a matter of maybe, so the instance of, I was resentful of other people around me weren't putting in the same amount of work that I was putting in. And what ended up happening is I looked at that and I realized what it was is I was working so hard because I felt I had to, and I was angry at them because they didn't feel that they had to work as hard. And so what I realized is all I needed to do was shift my perspective and look at that situation and say, oh, I actually have a choice. I actually don't have to work as hard either, but I'm choosing to. Oh, okay, now I'm not resentful anymore because this is a choice that I'm actually making. And if this no longer works for me, I have the ability to make another choice and not put in as much work. Nobody is holding a gun to my head. Nobody is telling me I have to do this. And the ability to understand that you actually have choices was a big part of my healing journey because I did so many things just because I thought I had to, because I was looking for that approval from other people. So I was never considering what it is that I actually wanted out of the situation, what was actually important to me, and feeling like I could actually have a say in the matter. And that is a direct correlation to the trauma I experienced in childhood. So when I understood that I actually have choices and I can make different choices if the situation is no longer working for me. Um, and once I did that, that removed any resentment. I didn't care if people were putting in work or not putting in work. I knew that I was focusing on what it is I needed to do, what it is that was important to me, and how I needed to operate, just so that I wouldn't be in a place of being resentful of other people making different choices. And often because of that, and because of the choices that I make, a lot of times people will follow along with me and try to, they see me setting an example. And it's not that I'm trying to set an example, I'm just trying not to be resentful so that I focus on the things that I'm doing, what it is I need to do for me. And there will be times that it's important for me as almost like a stress test to kind of, um, and I don't always do this consciously, but there are times where I'll do this as part of establishing where the boundaries are, right? Where are my tolerance levels? What is okay for me? What is not okay for me? So if I'm starting to feel resentful or feel in that energy where I have to do something, there will be times where I will deliberately not do the thing to check and see, am I doing this because I'm worried about other people's perception of it, other people's opinions of it, other people's judgments of me? Because if I'm doing that, I'm actually not in control of my life. I'm living my life to please other people. And I have to be very cautious about that because I know that that is a default coping mechanism for me. And so, and because I tend to do that, I have to figure out where my healthy boundaries are. So this isn't so much the testing the boundaries of the other person to see what I'll get pissed off at. It's more that focus on myself of like, and paying attention to what comes up when I defy or change or take care of myself, right? To say, I'm not actually going to do this. And then paying attention and observing what comes up for me when I do that. Do I start to get fearful? Do I get anxious? Do I start having a bunch of doubt of whether or not I actually should be doing this? Then that is a good indicator that I wasn't doing this because I truly wanted it. I was doing this because I thought this was somebody else wanted this, and I had slipped into that people pleasing mode. So paying attention to those kind of things definitely allows you to prevent resentments from coming up. It also allows you to um, deal with those fears, those doubts when they're small, and to be able to pull them out before they end up destroying the garden, right? Um, and so I know this talk was a little bit more all over the road because today I was dealing with some fears and doubts. So here's another piece that ends up coming in, looking in where did those fears and doubts come from? Sometimes that can be certain people that you talk to. Maybe it's a cranky coworker, and every time you talk to them, you start feeling depleted. Your energy's down. You start like, do I even like coming to this job, right? It could be going to a family gathering, maybe it's a family event, and you have to see that one relative that you don't really like talking to, and you know that they're going to ask you, like, oh, have you had kids yet? Or, oh, do you have a boyfriend yet? Or whatever it is, like, just feeling like whatever it is that you're doing with your life, it's not good enough, right? Or it could be, you know, maybe it's not anything directly to do with you, but two other people in your family are going to start some sort of dust up, right? And that can be uncomfortable. And there's all kinds of different things that can end up coming up, and you need to be able to um, see that how did you start to feel after your interaction with them? Did you start to question everything that you were doing? Did you start having these little doubts and uncertainties creep up in your thought process? Maybe it's stuff, maybe it's movies that you watch, maybe it's stuff that you watch on social media, and now you're starting to feel these fears and doubts. Maybe you see somebody, and it can definitely be like a positive thing. Maybe you see somebody on vacation and they got something like, a new baby, a new job, a new car, a new house, whatever it is, and you're like, wow, like, you're maybe happy for them, but you're thinking of like, oh man, that's never going to happen for me, or it's going to take forever for me to get there. And you start having fears and uncertainties and doubts because you slipped into comparison, right? You slipped into um, thinking that you may not actually reach the goal, or maybe they're able to perform something in a much better way than you are able to do. And that's where the fear and doubt came in. So it's important to understand, what were you doing or not doing that caused the fear, uncertainty, or doubt to come into play, so that way you know how to mitigate that and change that, to maybe reduce the time with that family member, reduce the social media time, focus more on your progress, your own personal progress of, did you do better today than you did yesterday, right? Looking at that kind of stuff. Where were you a year ago compared to today, right? And sometimes that can backfire on you too, because you're like, oh, a year ago I had all these things and I'm going through this rough patch in my life, and I'm like, oh, this really sucks now. And so you can kind of look at those kind of things, and it's a matter of bringing yourself back to the present moment and leveraging the control that you have in this current moment, in today, and being grounded in today. And then take a look at those things and have some kindness, some compassion, some caring for yourself if maybe you didn't operate in the best way. This isn't to give yourself excuses, and it's a matter of learning how to say, okay, I can't actually change the past, but I am now back in the present moment as of this moment, and going forward from this point, I can make the changes. I can be aware of those things. It's just when we're in that denial, we're denying our feelings about it. Maybe we're finding different ways to cope. And that prevents us from dealing with the actual problem. So sometimes all we need to do is allow ourselves permission to do the things that we think we can't do, allow ourselves the ability to take a look at and fixing our side of things that we find annoying, because whatever somebody else is reflecting to us and we find it annoying, when we fix that or figure out where we're doing that in our own lives, we fix that piece, then it no longer is a problem. Even if they are still behaving in that way, it just won't be a problem for us because we fixed our part, and it now shouldn't bother you, right? So um, making sure that we address any of those seeds of doubt and fear, and then being able to pinpoint, where did that start? Did it start today? Did it start a couple of days ago? Did it start last week? How long have you been denying those little seeds? And sometimes that can be hard because maybe the seed got planted a week ago and there's no evidence that it took root until you start to see the little sprout come up, right? And then you're like, oh man, now I'm feeling, oh, I shouldn't have done that. I'm feeling uncertain. I don't have the courage that I had last week. So, some things that you can do: increase your rest, make sure that you're getting enough rest. Make sure that if you're feeling angry, you're feeling resentful, journaling out those emotions so that you can get them out of your system. If you are feeling unsupported, maybe just talking to a friend or somebody that helps lift you up. And if you don't feel like you have somebody like that, then finding, somebody on social media that you find inspires you, always makes you feel better, going to that person and listening to some of their stuff. I have on YouTube that I create, like, inspiration lists or stuff like that, motivation, or like, I even have a kick in the butt one kind of thing, when I need to go back and listen to those kind of things. And usually that's enough. I also have music or playlists and stuff like that to help shift that mood, that energy. And so that is if you're feeling like you need some external support, right? So sometimes we all need other people, right? We need people to help boost us up and lift us up. Um, you can also do that in meditation. Maybe you're like, geez, my aunt would have understood this, and she was always good at making me feel better, and unfortunately she's passed away, right? So you can go in and do prayer or meditation and just connect with the memories of what it was like to be with her when she was lifting you up, when she was encouraging you, or whatever family member that you might have had that's passed on, and tapping into that. And then, of course, if you're tired, making sure that you're giving yourself the ability to rest. I'm terrible at that. I need a lot of work in that area. I'm getting better, right? And then, of course, if you're sick, then making sure that you're taking care of yourself in a way that helps you heal faster so that you don't prolong how long you're feeling sick. So, guys, with that, I'm going to wrap it up tonight. I hope you found this helpful. If you jumped in part way, then I invite you to go over to my YouTube channel, which is Coach Tina B 125. Click on the subscribe button because that is where I upload all of the replays of the live trainings that I do. And if you have any questions or concerns, feel free to message me, and I may do a training on the question that you bring up. And I also want you to stay tuned because coming up April 17th, I will be launching my new coaching program that is an 8-week program to help you implement these tools that I talk about to be able to shift you from feelings of depression, anxiety, dark, suicidal thoughts. Even those have been things that I have struggled with. And I help you go through this in a faster way that can help you both in your personal life and your professional life. So, guys, I hope you found that helpful, and we will see you again tomorrow. Take care. Have a great night. Bye.